So we just got back from seeing 2021's Lamb. No, it's a little bit late. No, it's a little bit late, being mid 2022. But yeah, went into it with some higher expectations and was ultimately let down, which is kind of upsetting. What was your takes on
Disappointment incarnate.
it? Disappointment incarnate. Yeah, the it was hyped up much more from what I saw before as like a legitimate, like a full on horror movie. Um,
Correct.
which it was not. It was like a teen drama with a mutated child,
It's a soap opera with a lamb child.
which is okay. It's just there's like three spooky things in the entire film, and if you set up the film to be a little creepier, like it had a ton of suspense in certain parts, especially near the beginning, where you still were kind of on the oh, this is a kind of spooky thing. I don't. That's at least how I felt. Like, were you at
It,
all?
it's like leading you on that it's yeah, I'm a horror movie, and then it's not.
It's like, hi,
It
no.
holds your hand. It's like, hey, we're gonna do some creepy stuff together in the back room, and then they're like, hey, here's a freaky looking kid, and nothing's gonna happen from this.
Ever. I mean, like the
But
only
it's gonna look cool.
yeah, but it's gonna look so pretty. It's A24, so the cinematography is gonna be above average. And the sound,
Cinematography was awesome.
yeah, the wherever they shot this in Iceland or Greenland or whatever island this was shot on,
It was Iceland.
Iceland. Okay, perfect. It was extremely beautiful. I think I would actually recommend the movie if you're into that, um, into the cinematography of it. But and the sound design I feel like was pretty good too
True. I
for
would agree with that.
for what it was. It could have been better, but for deep breathing sound design, it was pretty good, I think. But yeah, what did you think? Like the whole time you're kind of getting up to the monster, and what did you think of the monster?
Oh, it was he was just bad. He was very underwhelming. It wasn't like a scary monster, and he also uses a man-made weapon as his form of execution, which is kind of poetic, but also kind of annoying at the same time to me.
Yeah, like I was throughout the film, I wanted there to be, not that I'm super into gore, but you're kind of expecting there to be something more demonic or creepy, or something's death is going to be different.
Just anything,
Yeah,
just something weird, and nothing weird was happening except for the fact that there's a deformed lamb child.
which
Hashtag spoiler, but you should be watching it.
yeah, I don't understand. Like, what's the draw? I'm like, not I know what the draw is, but okay, I phrased that wrong. Why? I feel like I was deceived a little bit in the marketing department, and
100%.
and that's whatever. And and to go back to the monster, or not the monster, but how the monster kills the guy at the end of the film. It's Yeah, I think it is definitely poetic, like how they show the lady earlier on
Mhm.
killing the the daughter sheep thing with the
It's their
gun.
child.
She put him
Their
out of your
child.
put him out of your
Yeah,
misery.
yeah, they killed the mom in that way, which I respected that, but for being this monster thing, and we only got like what? How long was the monster in the movie? Like 6 minutes?
I don't think it was even that long.
It,
Probably two or three.
he just shows up and goes, "Yo, I went and got some milk, and I'm back." Takes the child and yeets the other dude.
It shows up, does something to a sheep, leaves. like the
He's he's like, "Yo, I need some of that thick sheep fur in my life right now."
I need it right this instant. Like
And then he dips.
if he just leaves, and
Well,
he
there's kind of points in the movie where you think that he's around.
yes,
You know, there's quite a few shots where there's something weird, and it's like the sheep child. What was the sheep child's name? It was Ada, right?
Ada, yeah, ADA.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Ada. it's kind of led that Ada meets this thing as like at least 2 points that I can think of. But they never show it, which I get suspense building. But I guess I was gonna say Ada never speaks on it, but Ada has a lamb head, so I guess Ada can't speak.
Yeah,
It's never referenced for any reason.
like I felt like it would have been interesting if they would have included a scene where Ada chooses the humans over Goatman.
Yeah, see, I was kind of hoping that at the end, because Ada's all depressed and sad because its dad got shot, and you're like, oh, Ada's gonna be like, no, goat daddy, I want my human daddy, and it just goes, yeah, no, I'm gonna leave with you.
Yeah, it's because like when the scene where the dog dies and the Ada runs inside the barn, and that there's that whole thing where it looks so perfect in they do a mirror shot, and it looks like the
Yeah,
thing's gonna go through the door, and you're like, oh, you're probably gonna see it finally, and then it just cuts.
which is teasing you, which I respect, but they built all this up, and the monster wasn't even that cool.
Yeah, like I was not. I was thinking the monster was going to be way different than what it was,
Yeah,
like
I
in
was very
hindsight.
disappointed in the monster.
And so far, maybe I'm really not looking in the right places. I'm assuming this is based off some Icelandic folklore of some sort.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
And because like that's remember the whole scene where the dog gets freaked out by the knot.
Yeah, I never understood what that was meaning.
And I was trying to look into that, and I couldn't find anything. And yeah, that was just there for some reason. I'm sure it does have a meaning, and I'm just not finding it. But
It,
it seemed odd.
yeah, it's got to have some kind of purpose. It's got to symbolize something.
And
Was that before or after the woman killed the female sheep?
it was pretty early on. I want to say it was before, but
It could be like maybe it's like breaking the bonds of what is acceptable in society, or
because if it was after, actually, that would have been interesting. If it was after, it could have been like Goatman leaving a mark.
yeah, like they broke some kind of
Norm or something.
something. Yeah, because they like crossed the line because she killed the thing that birthed the child. I was wondering because I know you do a lot of like religious, so I had to look for religious meanings in movies.
Hmm.
Um, is there anything that could be tied to the like the sheep is its descendant, but it's like, well, I guess it's a daughter, not a son. I was gonna say it could be like a Christian-esque type thing, but maybe not.
I the only thing that popped up to me that I really don't think the movie has any underlying message like that. I was actually reading a review before we started, not a review, but an interview with the director where they described the film as a Christ-like film, but then the reasons they were describing it like that, I were not things I would associate with Christ. It was very weird. And
Yeah,
basically, like
that's what I was trying to get at.
nature, it's basically saying like nature fighting back, and I think that was a comment by the actress who I'll have the name of the actress on screen now, but I don't remember her name. Um, and that was kind of interesting. The only thing I thought during the film was that I'm pretty sure there's something you can do with Ada, and it makes it an anagram or something or whatever for Eve. Um, Post production 6-5 here. Um, I was super incorrect about this. I'm going to leave it in there for the sake of the video. It's not Ada, AVA, that I was referring to when I say second Eve. It's Ava, AVA. And there's a couple other references to this in other movies. I believe, I could be wrong about this, but the closest one is Only Lovers Left Alive, where Eve's sister is called Ava. If I can find anything more out about this, I'll put it on screen. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Post production 6-5 out, or something like that. Like in some weird sense, it means first or something like that.
Maybe an
Um,
Icelandic.
yeah, I don't. I could be super wrong about that. I have this little thing in my head that says that, but I don't. If they're trying to say that it's way too underneath for me to pick up on it any major way. Um,
Yeah, I was just curious because I know that you've done some other films in that.
yeah, I didn't.
It does mean it means noble nobility, adornment, first daughter
Ah,
in Icelandic.
which is funny because she was not the first daughter; she was the like seventh.
Yeah, what was up with that? There was at least three. I don't know.
Yeah, I so
The pillars of buried Adas. It was like a mountainside with a bunch of
cross.
crosses with Ada on it.
Yeah, I had like if we go over, I was just about to say, if we go over to the Lamb Letterbox page, follow us on Letterbox. Um, that the description is a couple discovers a mysterious half lamb, half human newborn in their on their farm in Iceland. The unexpected prospects of the family brings them much joy before ultimately destroying them, which I think is a good description. But I think I don't have it pulled up right now. I think the IMDb description's a little bit better because it actually feels it says the backstory a little bit, which is that they had tried having kids. Like near the beginning, remember when they're talking and he says, "Oh, I don't want anything to change" or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like right at the beginning of the film, and I think she gets a little visibly upset about that because I think she wants a kid, and obviously she's had a couple and they've died, so
So we're
the
inferring that those Adas that are on the mountainside were their children that didn't make it, or
I
at least a memorial of those children.
I'm assuming, and this is actually
But
tied into something I wanted to bring up a little earlier was were those other things also lamb children? The other Adas. The only reason I would say that is that how nonchalantly the brother interacts at first. I think you had mentioned this while we were watching it that because he acts so comfortably around the sheep baby that you kind of think he's seen one before.
yeah,
Um,
I was wondering if the world itself that they're in had some kind of weird, like, human animal hybrid things. Like there's a Netflix series that has something along those lines. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head.
Sweet Tooth. I think it's called Sweet Tooth or Sweethorn
Yeah,
or something like that.
something like, yeah. And I was curious as if this world they're in actually is in that same type of universe where there's been some kind of genetic splicing, but then they never reference it again. So you're like, is it a demon? Is it a genetic crossbred thing, or is it just random, like you're saying, Icelandic folklore thing?
And I don't really think there's going to be. I'm going to assume it's more on the folklore side, but I don't really think there's an answer to that. And it's really annoying. Not that
Yeah,
they're.
it leaves you wanting to know, and they never explain it.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't need to have an ending like that either. Like it doesn't need to be explained. Really, if it was a movie that was like a lot of horror movies don't explain anything, and that's okay. But because they set it up more, in my opinion, as a more serious or maybe like more intellectual kind of movie, just on its creation, like how it's presented, I kind of expected more from it. Um, but it really let me down in that regard. I think that was upsetting. We've been kind of ragging on the movie quite a bit. So, what are the things you really like about it?
I think it was shot nice. There's a lot of like, I know when we were watching it, you pointed out a number of scenes that were had a lot of depth to them. I appreciated that. There were some of those mirror or windowed things. You were better explaining this than I am, where they showed reflections well. So it was shot pretty. It looked nice. The CGI, I couldn't tell if the lamb baby is actually a CGI thing or if it's a like child with a lamb hat on or a lamb like mask or something. So I think that's impressive. If it isn't actually a CGI thing, that they did a really good job on that.
Yeah, I think that like especially when the baby actually forgot about that. When the baby was born, there's like one particular scene where I'm like that's CGI, I could just tell. But then everything after that, it just seemed like it melded really well together. And I'm assuming what they did is they had a either a dwarf or a child, in the scenes and filmed with a green screen head, and just superimposed the sheep heads on it, because the other parts of it were really
The
fantastic.
yeah, the mannerisms in which it moved were pretty solid.
They
So
were
if it's CGI, they did a really good job on it.
eh, my
There
favorite.
is.
You
Go ahead,
go.
I'm sorry.
My favorite character of the movie was the sheep baby, was Ada, by far. All the characters in the movie, other than Ada, are kind of jerks, and I don't like them. Ada was pure.
Yeah, they all have a non-desirable quality to them.
And yeah, what were you gonna say before I before I interrupted you?
Oh, I mean, the movie does do a good job of making you feel very uncomfortable.
Yes.
So, like, one scene in particular is when they brought the Ada into their house and they got the crib for Ada. They set it up in their room, and then there's like a side shot. It's almost like the camera is tucked behind the crib, and you just see, you don't know if it's a goat limb or a arm, but you see something that like flings up for like just maybe a frame or two, and it's very unsettling. It's before they expose the thing's body. You're like, what the crap is this? Like that made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, like that was. It felt like the first half and the second half of the film were very different films, and I was reading somewhere that the film took something like 8 years to not finalize, because they didn't. It sounded like they shot it all in a very short amount of time, but like the story and what it was going to be took like 8 years to get together, which is
A
kind
long
of,
time.
yeah, it's a long time. And to be perfectly honest with you, if I spent 8 years making something and it turned out like lamb, I would be really upset. Um,
True.
I mean, like, God, again, there's some aspects of it that are really good, and I know it won a couple of awards, which is impressive, and it made its money back at the box office, which is also impressive for a basically a glorified indie film. Especially since from this director, this is his fourth. I think this is his fourth film, first major production film.
Hmm.
If I understand correctly, I could be wrong on that. So that's interesting, and the marketing was, I think the trailer is superb. Actually, the thing that makes you want to watch the movie. I don't know if I'm assuming the marketing team at A24 made that entire thing.
Most
Um,
likely.
but whoever did that did a really good job. Um, but yeah, going back to what you said about making you feel uncomfortable, especially near in the beginning of the film, where they're just showing all the sheep births. That was, I don't want to say it's uncomfortable. It's just a little, if you're not used to seeing animal births, that would, I'm assuming most people aren't. And especially what like animals do after they give birth, like the sheep just going up to the bloody baby and just licking it. Like
Yeah.
I'm a little squeamish with blood, and so that, even for me for a second, I'm like, oh no, that didn't sit right.
Yeah,
Uh,
those parts didn't bother me as much, but the impregnation of the sheep was uncomfortable.
oh, that was great. Oh my
Uh,
dude, I loved that scene. It was such a good
no
imp.
one had something.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
People who haven't watched it usually, yeah, I love the sheep impregnation scene. It was great.
It was great. It was beautifully shot.
God
It,
tier impregnation.
well, because it's
I'm
like
sorry.
it's so
Doesn't show anything.
it
It's
doesn't
just
show anything, and you have to hear the implications, because all it is it's a snowstorm leading into the barn, and you hear like a deeper breathing throughout the time, and then like as soon as you hear the door open, you hear like a really heavy, deep, like rapid breathing for like 2 seconds, and then that's the shot. Like you don't see
true.
anything, and then you just see the pregnant sheep like going back and forth and falling over. Like it gets fully pregnant and ready to give birth in less than a day. Like if I understand the time correctly, like it happens really quickly.
It seemed like it was very quick. Yeah. That's another thing I had a question on. You know, in the scene where they're in like the space between their reality and like their dream state or something. There's a couple scenes where they're in like just this pure white area, and sometimes they'll have like a sheep or the breathing or something will be there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scene where the sheep has like you hear this heartbeat in the background, and I was convinced that the sheep like its chest was opening or moving. And y'all were like, no. Did we ever decide if that was a thing? Because I'm still convinced that the sheep's chest was like pulsating.
Oh, the sheep's chest was definitely pulsating, but that's what sheep chests do. Like
It was
if they're really furry, it can look like that because their wool gets matted, and so it creates like a door.
well, that was
Um,
very eerie.
actually, that's I didn't even think about that because that for someone who doesn't have been around sheep, that is freaking weird looking.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm assuming they did that intentionally to make it look weird because it was weird to me. I'm like, what is happening?
was that was during the main character's dream sequence, wasn't it? Where she was like,
Yeah.
we were
Yeah.
having that discussion on whether sheep's eyes glow.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep. That
yes,
was that whole thing.
yes, they do. Um, so yeah, I don't. The dream sequences, the one with her was kind of interesting, but yeah, the recurring one, it happens once for the husband and once for the female lead. Is they're running on the marsh, and then they just sort of stop in front of the camera and they're kind of lost. It happens with the husband first, and then at the end of the movie, it's implied that she's there. It doesn't actually show the ground, and that's like after everything. Remember at the very end, like where she's just kind of
Yeah.
standing there, and
Just breathes and looks up.
yeah, and looking up what the director has said, you know, go off the little track for here for a second. I feel like it's if you're a good director, you don't say much when asked directly about the films, but you have other things that you've said in your life that direct people to be able to know what you're talking about or what the message is or if there was a message, what the point of the film was. And since this guy has so little cinema, such a low shelf of movies, you can't see if he has a consistent message he's trying to say throughout his films. And that's a little frustrating because usually filmmakers have like if they're more serious types, they'll have something they consistently bring up. If it might not be the main thing in each film, but it's something they care about in each one. I would gander that this guy's thing going forward would probably be something like environmentalism, um, because from what I've been able to read about the actress and how she interpreted the scene was that it was a rebirth after Ada's gone, husband dies, brother's finally gone, her life resets. Um, and so I'm almost thinking that when they bring up the same scene with the husband, it means the opposite thing because it happens like the night before he dies. I think. I can't remember. I can't remember if I'm correct on that, but like for him because he's running there and he's exhausted when he gets there, like the end point that it's signifying that's his end. Where when it happens to his wife, it's his beginning. It's her beginning. Um, I don't know. That's just my theory on that so far.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. I don't know if I not as a I don't know if I disagree. I don't know if I would like it if that's the whole purpose. Because like the amount of loss she just had to endure to get to that point seems like quite the toll. Like her life's not going to be the same unless she's just like, yo, he's gone now. That's cool.
Wow, I really. Yeah, no, like you could say some if that is how she interprets it, which you can't know, um, that that's pretty shallow. So I kind of hope that that's not how they want the character to be interpreted. Um, but I actually can't really think of another way you can interpret the end other than like release.
Well, well, bringing me back to the point where they were having earlier on in the movie where they're eating dinner,
Hmm.
and he's like, yeah, I don't want anything to change, and I like how things are. Well, she clearly didn't, like you had mentioned. Well, when he's gone, now she's gonna have things change.
True,
So it
true.
almost kind of ties into that, which I don't really enjoy personally, but
Oh
it
yeah,
kind of fits her character because she it seems like she had this fling with the brother.
true.
Well, they have like a history, and
That I think you could probably say that you maybe the wife really didn't love the husband, or was was just kind of there or just existing, and
yeah, I don't know.
like obviously she had kids, she really wanted kids and couldn't have kids. So yeah, maybe the yeah, that'd be. I feel like that would be really shallow, but I think we're both kind of on the same, sort of on the same page with it just being like, now is the change. Um,
Yeah.
the time of man is over.
How about lamb goat people shall
uh,
reign supreme.
because yeah, that's the only really thing I can think of. Oh, there was yeah, I don't know. It was weird. I'm really looking forward to see what else this director makes. I know there hasn't really been anything else brought up. Um,
Yeah.
to tie in a,
How would you rate it?
I would rate it when I initially.
Well,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, what is the scale, so we have that established.
Well, I'm going to use the letterbox scale. I'll do two ratings. So my letterbox scale. My letterbox score is 3 stars out of 5. Um, and that's solely I'm giving it about a star and a half bet just on cinematography. And I'm the other half is basically concept. I like the concept. It just was executed poorly. I think, like the story of it and the
Hmm.
cinema. That's those are the two things I like about it. But then within that, I'd probably, if I could give it a numerical score, like a 0 to 100, probably what's 62 out of 100. Uh,
Okay.
is kind of maybe even just like a straight up 60 or 58 to 60 or something like that. What
So it's
would you?
a barely passing film.
Yeah. Like there are
Okay.
certain films that can be carried by cinematography, and this was not one of them.
I respect that.
What would
Yeah,
you rate
I,
it?
I mean, I'm in the same ballpark. I think for the 1 out of 5, I would probably give it. I'm more in the 2 point, like. Could does Letterbox let you do decimal placing, or is it like a solid 2.5?
You
Because I
can,
feel like it's better than a 2.5, but it's like a 2.6 for
yeah,
me.
you can do star and star and a half. So you could do 2.5 star, but you can't do like 2 and 7/4.
Okay, well then I would give it a 2.5, and that's just because it was filmed cool. It had some creepy stuff, and then the story I feel like was very lacking. They didn't really. There was like probably a good 30 to 40 minutes of the film that was just like a soap opera drama where they're just hanging out. And I found that to be very meh. Like I had high expectations. I was like, "Oh, this could be a solid 4.5," and I was like, "Yeah, let's go." And then nothing really had come of it, and I found that to be disappointing. I feel like it was a train that started off going fast, and as it progressed, I liked the movie less and less the longer it went.
Same. I absolutely agree with that. I definitely agree. Um, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I have nothing to add. That actually sums it up really well. But yeah, just as the film goes on, I can't even imagine. Actually, I bet. Hold on. I bet if I saw this in theaters, I would rate it higher. Just because I know myself as a person. I know this is going off a little bit, but I know that cinematography is a bigger thing to me. So if I saw this in person, I'd probably be blown away. It was like Green Knight. In person, I'm like, this movie is kind of okay, awesome cinematography, but then seeing it again, I'm like, this movie only has good cinematography.
Yeah.
And I think I would have that response. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I
See,
don't.
I don't feel like a large screen would have probably made me more mad because I would have spent a lot more money on it and been like, no story here. There's no substance. It's just, yo, we can't have babies. We have this baby. We're gonna love it. And then nothing.
Yeah, you know what? I think I also agree with that. Like, I don't. It would be, I don't know. So we need to go see some more movies in the movie theater to test this theory.
True. That's true.
um, but yeah, do you have okay? Question:
Okay.
does this film remind you of any other films that you would recommend, good or bad?
Other films that I would recommend. Um, Oddly enough, I would probably say The Platform. And The Platform's actually really good, but it's also shot in such a unique way where this has some like cool, unique shots that if you want to see a good, well shot movie, I would watch The Platform.
I like
I
it.
mean,
I like it. We need to. You've seen that. I haven't seen that yet. So maybe that will be a review in the future.
you need definitely need to see the platform. The platform is great.
This film reminded me of two other films while watching it. One I've seen, one I haven't seen, but I know the story. One, for some reason, the long shots of nature really reminded me of Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson.
That's a
Especially,
really good one.
we should rewatch that film because we both watched it together and do a review of it because I love that film. It's in my top 15 films of all time. I know a lot of people dunk on it a little bit, but
Yeah, I want
uh,
to steal that because I agree. The shot thing that you just said,
and
that's 100% true.
can you remember the scene where she
Oh, do
drops?
I remember the scene?
Yeah, you remember all the scenes in that movie, I'm sure. Do you remember the
I'm
scene?
not denying it.
Do you remember the scene in Lamb where she drops off the brother at the bus stop?
Yeah.
That was the number one scene for some reason that just completely tied the movie to Under the Skin for me because it reminded me of the scene where Scarlett Johansson's character, who remains unnamed throughout the film, gets onto a bus and like there's a lot of shot symmetry. Like the bus, she gets onto the bus from the same angle, and the bus is in the
Yeah,
same
that's a
place.
good reference.
And yeah, I
That's a really good reference because they got that weird. Well, we won't. I won't say anything to spoil that movie. That's a
um,
super good recommendation, though.
and then one other one which I haven't seen, and I think we should definitely both watch it. Which I was talking about it during the film is The Lobster. I can't remember the director right now. I'll have it on screen. But The Lobster literally has to do with. This isn't
I
really
remember you
spoiling
talking
it.
about this.
Is it has to do with a society where if you don't have a mate, this is like all of humanity. If you don't have a mate and you can't find a mate within like 6 weeks or something, you are turned into an animal. So that's why it's called The Lobster. And that was giving me hard vibes just of what I know at that movie. Like when the brother was seeing the sheep person and not reacting to it, for some reason it was just like, that's that.
Yeah. And so you said hard vibes and made me giggle.
Hard vibes. It's making me think
Getting
about
getting hard vibes about these lobsters.
it.
Well, I just went to Olive Garden, or not Olive Garden, Red Lobster today for my kid, and it made me think of. I saw a bunch of
Oh,
lobsters. I'm like, hard lobsters! Ah,
rock lobster. Okay,
yeah.
so your final score
Out of like the 5 or out of the 100?
out of the five. You said
I guess a 2.5.
2.5.
It was disappointing to me.
The
I liked Jason X 100 times better,
oh, we should totally do a review of Jason X. Okay,
and Jason X is bad.
Jason X is super bad. Okay, 6-8 has spoken. 6-8 gives it a 2.5.
2.5 with a sad face.
6-5 gives it a 3. We have spoken. The talls have spoken.
It has so been decreed. Let it be stated and emblazoned in the world.
Okay, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have any
I love you.
I love you all. Love you, love you. Give us your movie recommendations and see you next time.